Mr. Terrific number 7, written by Eric Wallace, art by Gianluca Gugliotta. We left off last issue with a pretty much just an unrelated one-shot, and this issue picks up with a pretty much unrelated one-shot. It does set up a couple of the through lines for the final issue, but we have a port of Los Angeles, and they hear some huge-ass loud cocoon noise as something apparently hits the docks, but they can't see anything. And then all of a sudden when they look up, there's this giant ocean liner there, just appears out of nowhere. And as they try to approach it to find out what it is, where it came from, they are repelled back by some sort of force. And they're like, oh boy, the ship's haunted. We got to get a superhero down here. So then we cut over to West Hollywood, where Mr. Terrific is talking to some guy about how, oh man, nobody puts any stock in their own life anymore. Everyone thinks it won't happen to them, blah, blah, blah. As we see this young kid wearing headphones crossing the street. And, of course, he doesn't hear some car coming, and Mr. Terrific swoops over, gets the kid out of harm's way, and he's like, now remember, child, you look both ways, blah, blah, blah. And, oh, I'm sorry, this was also because it was part of a car chase of the thief stealing something. And Mr. Terrific puts down the kid, tells him, stay safe. And then he uses his T-sphere to create a gravity well, which stops the speeding car in its tracks, which then this stereotypical ass chef comes out and just like, I tell you what, I give you hot dogs for all of your life. And Mr. Terrific's like, don't worry about it. We're good. We're square. Bye. And then just like none of that ever comes back. Apparently, at Holt Industries, the previous night, somebody tried to breach security. And they're trying to figure out who it is. There's a short little bit here of Jamal, a.k.a. the guy who's going to be taking over after Michael Holt leaves Holt Industries, sending some message to his father, I guess. It says dad. And then he seems all suspicious, so if that comes up later. But as they go and talk to the scientists who are trying to figure out who broke into the system, Donald's already there, and they're like, oh, so this system's made so it basically plants a tracker inside the person, and it's like, it's hostile, and they'll be sure to show themselves, or else they'll surely die. And at that point, Donald's like, oh, I gotta go take care of security stuff, bye. And he leaves, and he's like, oh God, I'm the one who breached security. What's going to happen to me? And then we get back to the ghost ship, and Mr. Terrific arrives, and they explain everything that I explained to you, and how they're getting some sort of radiation from it, so they think it might be like nuclear bomb waste or something like that. So Mr. Terrific jumps on the ship, does some scans, and finds, yes, there is a giant, nuclear warhead on this ship, and it's armed to go off in an hour and a half. And he's like, all right, hour and a half, I can deal with that. That's not too bad. But as he tries to approach it, he hits that same sort of force field. And he's like, all right, well, let me just adjust the range of vision on my mask. Ultraviolet, nope. X-ray, nope. What about gamma? And as he turns it to view gamma radiation, he sees that he's surrounded by all these invisible soldiers. So, of course, the fight scene starts, and as soon as it does, one guy yells out, like, make it faster! And the countdown goes down to just 5 minutes. And so the fighting continues, and he realizes that he's not able to get through all these people and stop the bomb at the same time. So he sets off a T-sphere to reverse the polarity, blah, blah, mumbo-jumbo. Point being is that everyone can now see all of the soldiers, including ones that were on the ground outside of the ship. There's a little cutaway here of Donald talking to Steven, which is the bad dude from 2 issues ago. And he's like, hey, they hit me with something. I need some help. And he's like, yeah. Get back to your house. I'll have a private medical team there. You can't go to the hospital because you literally committed corporate espionage, so you'll go to prison forever. But I'll keep you alive because you could be very useful to me. And then as Donald's freaking out, he cuts open his arm and sees that there's circuitry underneath. So that's a thing. So meanwhile, the soldiers are all going after the police outside, Mr. Terrific up top, and there's only 40 seconds left on the bomb. The police make their way in, giving Mr. Terrific enough time to focus on the bomb, and of course he disables it, and they're like, and that's why you're called a superhero. We cut over real quick to Holt Industries inside another security room where Karen Starr, a.k.a. Power Girl, just swoops in with super speed, maybe steals something. hard to say, but she's like, all right, goodbye, Michael, and wherever you are, wish me luck. I'm going to need it. So that's a thing. And then finally Michael goes to his weird ninth dimensional place, and he's like, oh, there was a break-in at Holt Industries. Computer, get the DNA of the person who did it. And the computer's like, here's the DNA. And of course he sees it's Donald. So he calls up Alika, and Donald is already outside her door and saying like, hey, you gotta let me in. I'm changing. And he's like, I don't care what kind of person you are. I'm not letting you in. And she calls up Michael, and Michael's like, hey, he's the one who broke in. Do not let him in that door. And then the door explodes, and we see this weird, like, half-human, half-cybernetic freak of nature show up as Donald, saying, like, you should have been nicer to me, Alika. And that's it. That's where the issue leaves off. Fine. I mean, we've been setting up this whole, corporate espionage, Donald's going to betray them thing forever. If this is how they want to handle it, him actually being, like, a superpowered person, fine, if that's the way you want to do it. I'm so bored with this book because nothing matters. Like, yeah, no, in issue 7 of your book, I'm sure you're just going to let this dirty bomb go off instead of just beating it, especially when you're trying to focus on a corporate espionage thing, even if the book wasn't being canceled. Like, no, you're clearly trying to just focus on this one thing, and then everything else is just, we need to have some... Corporate espionage does not lead to a lot of fight scenes. How do we get him into fight scenes? And the answer is whatever thing of the week is happening. So I'm just bored with this book for the most part. I can't really hold it in that high regard. It's okay at best, but I'm going to give it like a 5. Nothing is inherently bad. It's just boring.